I'm here with, for me, it's like a dream come true to me too, because Charles Cecil, creator of, or co-founder of Revolution Software.
Yep.
I play Lure of Tempers at the time.
And you look so young.
Well, I'm 38. So, and then Beneath Still Sky. I never finished Lure of Tempers, however. It was very hard for me. And so at
How
the
old
time,
were you? How old were you?
I think at the time around probably 12, 13 years old.
And you played it in English?
And I played in English. Yes.
Wow, so you learned all your English, or a lot of English, from the
games.
medieval
Yes.
pseudo. Really? That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, so I am a child of Sierra and LucasArts.
Brilliant,
right?
brilliant.
So then you made Beneath Still Sky, and that game was incredible. I still play it to these days from time to time. I have it. You guys have it free on GOG, so
Yep.
it's part of one of the. Then you did something fantastic, and I'm going to tell you why. Because you created what I, as a point-and-click adventure fan, was expecting from a long time, and nobody understood. Broken Sword.
Right. In what way were you expecting it?
I felt that LucasArts was a little bit like all their games graphically kept being the same. As
Right.
much as I love Full Throttle, when the Dick came up, I was expecting the next evolution.
Yeah.
Sierra was experimenting. Point-and-click adventure games were pushing the boundaries at the time.
Yeah.
Phantasmagoria, so on.
Yeah.
And then came Broken Sword, and I was blown away with the graphics. So you made the perfect game for me.
Can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
When we moved from Beneath the Steel Sky, which we wrote with Dave Gibbons, and Dave had drawn the backgrounds in pencil, and then they were painted. Then we scanned them and animated them, and we brought forward animators from Lure of the Temptress, so they were very experienced, and I think they were fantastic. I think the animation, the sprite animation, led by a fellow called Steve Oates, was absolutely fantastic. So then when we moved forward, we needed really high quality and very experienced background artists. And I went to a college called Ballyfermot in Dublin. And in that, because we were interested in animators, but I was shown round by a gentleman who was the lecturer, the head of layout design. And he looked at what we were doing and he said, I can do better. And he showed me his layouts, and they were so beautiful. They were so beautiful, and I was blown away. And he said, you should employ me. And I said, I think I should employ you. So that's, I mean, you're very, very generous, but that opening scene of Beneath the Steel, of Broken Sword, is the layouts of Owen Cahill, the music of Barrington Phelan, and the voice of Rolf Saxon as George Stobart. And it was those three together, I think, that felt new. And it really was the three of them coming together. Barrington Phelan had been a friend of mine about 5 years earlier, because we played cricket together.
Oh.
And purely by chance.
Okay.
You know, my girlfriend at the time, her boyfriend at the time, had a cricket team, and Barry was one of the cricketers.
Okay.
He used to call himself the Panther. I'm not sure anybody else called him the Panther, but he liked to think of himself as the Panther, in that he would reach out, like Panther-esque, or Pantherine, in the way that he played cricket. And you know, what I do in life is I try and collect talented people, because it's just such a pleasure working with talented people. So our next project, we're working with Dave Gibbons on a new title.
Again?
Sorry,
can you repeat that?
We're working with Dave Gibbons on our next title.
Okay.
And very, very ambitious.
Doesn't have a 2 at the end, or does it?
Well, you will find out early next year. You'll find out early next year. And it's just a pleasure. He's one of those guys who just brings an awful lot. He's just got a great eye. And it's a pleasure to go around collecting these really talented people. I guess it's a little bit like Hotel California. You know, people can check out, but they can never leave. I'll always go back. It's like the Blues Brothers. I go looking for them.
And now I'm going to tell you a story.
Please do.
and this is going to sound in some part bad, but I want to tell you this because I come from Venezuela.
Right.
So it's a small South American country. I played both Lure of Tempests and Beneath the Still Sky, not original.
No.
And not because I didn't want to. I didn't know better at the time. My country, video games were, especially for PC, originals were nowhere to be found.
I know. And if you had found them, they would have been outrageously expensive.
Yes. But besides that, so imagine how it feels now for me to be in front of you, because I was a humble boy from a very small city in a very small country in South America, playing your games, and those times bring me so much joy, and I am over myself.
Well, I'm humbled that you're so excited. Thank you, that's really kind.
Then you did Broken Sword 3.
Yes.
And I gotta be honest in the sense that I never loved the transition from 2D graphics to 3D. I never understood as a fan, not as you need to live, you need to make the money. But I never understood really the transition, because 3D was awful for a graphic adventures game.
Well, it certainly was when Jane Jensen was, in the very early days, she when she brought Gabriel Knight 3 across.
Yes.
That 3D really was not ready, was it? I'm sure she would say the same.
Yeah.
It's not a criticism of the game itself, but visually, the thing about an adventure game is you rely on the emotion of the characters and the story being conveyed. Yes. And if you're just shooting people, or if you're going very fast down a tunnel, then 3D is great because you can move around. But
I think Broken Sword 3 was the best 3D adventure at the time. I think you got it right. I mean, graphically I'm still not in love, but I think the mechanics were the best I got, because I think at the time also, even Grim Fandango, one of the best adventure graphics, I love it, but the interface was really clunky.
Yeah.
And Broken Sword 3, I think, got it right. And that for me, because I even played that on console. I didn't even play on PC at the time, because I didn't have a powerful enough PC. And I said, this is the first game that I really feel that got it right. Not graphically, I must say, in the sense that, you come from Broken Sword 2, beautiful 2D rendered graphics. Then, as much good as they are, 3D were not the same for me. But the mechanics were really spot on. The reason I'm telling you this is because I want to make you a question. Where you're working on something, so I'm not going to ask you about that, but where do you think is the next step for adventure?
Can I go back?
Absolutely.
So the big change was from physical distribution to digital distribution. That changed everything. Because in physical distribution, you have a shop front, and they may have 200 or 300, of which the majority would have been PlayStation, and then you'd have had some Segas, and then Game Boy, and then a little area for PC. And that was becoming more and more marginal. And those PC games were just the big hits. So what the publishers were saying was, one, PC is dead as a format, and two, adventures are stone cold dead. And to an extent they were right. Because retail didn't want to support PC, and it particularly didn't want to support adventures, and there was no other way of getting one's game to market. When you have digital, obviously you have an infinite shop, and also you can go truly global. So it means now that in Venezuela we can translate into Spanish, Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, sell throughout South America in a way that wouldn't have been possible before. So it probably wasn't worth the publishers retailing the game in Venezuela. So therefore that vacuum was filled by people just copying it because people wanted to play. And I totally understand that, and that's the way that it was. When we changed from physical to digital, suddenly there was this infinite shop front that opened up, and that is why we could write a Broken Sword 5 in the style that we did, supported by our fans, which was amazing.
Yeah, and now it's coming out on Switch.
Now it's coming out on Switch.
And
this is the ultimate version. It looks great, honestly. It looks great. And if I can, you know, if you'd like to show some of the B-roll, what the things I'm proud of is, first of all, the thing about Switch is that it's called Switch, obviously, because you switch from a portable device to a dock device.
Yeah.
So the question was, do we do it as touchscreen, or do we do it using the Joy-Con? And then, not me, the programmer who was responsible, Joost, said, I think we could do both. And he wrote a system which absolutely seamlessly transitions. So you touch the screen, and all of the cursor disappears because it's a touch screen. And then the moment you touch the Joy-Con stick, the cursor appears, and you can play it that way. So it's the idea of jumping in between. But so it is the ultimate version because we've learned so much from all the others and this. But just things like you can use the left joypad or the Joy-Con to move the cursor, but the right one then can scroll the screen, so that when the screen is bigger than one screen width, you can then play the game, and you don't need to move George around. You can look around, which is a nice feature. But we also, I was very keen to put in something that was unique. So what we've done is we put in a whole lot of movies that are unlocked as you progress through the game. And what they do is they relate to a section of gameplay that you've just finished. So the first one unlocks and it talks about the way that the layouts were drawn. The second one will talk about the gameplay. The third one will talk about the history. And they're basically, it's footage that we haven't shown before, or mainly haven't shown before. And we hope that people will enjoy seeing a little bit about what goes into writing a game.
I certainly will. I'm going to buy it for the third time, but it's worth it. It's worth it. So with Broken Sword 5, something I found really good is that you went back to the root.
Yep.
So it was everything was beautiful again. So one of the great things is you went back. That's what I love first. When I saw those 2D hand drawn, the characters are 3D but made in a way that they look
Yeah, they're pre-rendered. Pre-rendered. Yeah.
So they look quite awesome. Where do you see yours?
Okay, because so the hand-drawn, people love the hand-drawn look.
Yes.
And I really admire a game called The Little Acre.
How's it called?
The Little Acre, which was done by a team called Pewter in Ireland. And what they did is they came out of Ballyfermot College, which is exactly the college where 20 years ago, Owen Cahill, who was our genius layout artist, it was the college. So I was really pleased, and I did a bit of work with them. But what's brilliant is they've used software to hand drawn and hand animate, and it does create a great look.
So great.
But it does add a huge amount of work, because if you think about when a character turns, you think about all of that. In Broken Sword 1, we put a huge amount of work, or Steve Oates did as the animator, into, if you turned on that foot, then you'd go around like that. If you turned on that foot, then you'd turn around like that. So there was a vast, huge, very complex code. And obviously if you do it in 3D, then it just works. It just works.
Yeah.
So I can't promise what we're going to do next time, but I think probably the best way, and a lot of people won't like me saying this, is to use 3D, but to work as hard as possible to stylize the animation and to make it look like it was hand-drawn. That has to be the way.
We've seen like branches of point and click. We can say what Telltale's is doing, with the Walking Dead. Now Quantic Dream with the latest Detroit Become Human or Heavy Rain. I think they are sort of branches of point and click adventure.
Oh, absolutely. Or Her Story.
Her Story.
Or Life is Strange.
Yes.
Or all of these. I mean, the adventure genre is extraordinarily broad.
Yes.
And it is an amazingly important genre, because, as you were saying, it means so much to people. Now, you might, the last FIFA sold many, many more than Broken Sword, but nobody remembers the last FIFA. Not really. Nobody remembers the changes. So we don't make nearly as much money as FIFA. But honestly, I don't care. What excites me is that people like yourself are very passionate about the brand.
You connect with the game. The game talks to you. It's about the story. It's about the characters. It's about, that's what makes it so special, the game. So I can tell you Day of Tentacle at the time, for example, what it meant.
What a beautiful game that
King
was.
Quest when you see the first King Quest 2, and then you saw those beautiful graphics in King Quest 5, but then you went to King Quest 7, which is a simple game, but graphically was like a fairy tale. Or, as I said, Beneath Still Sky, I love it because it reminded me so much of the style of LucasArts games at the time. Lord of Tempers, I remember, had a particular different sort of graphical style.
Yeah, but that all came from the limitations of the resolution and the palette.
Yeah, of course.
So the ST had a very limited palette, the Atari ST. It was a wonderful machine. So the style is defined by the limitations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it comes to define itself, because when you master that within the constraints, it looks amazing in its own right.
Of course.
But it all came from getting over or doing the very best you could within the constraints of the system.
And then, as I said, we jumped from Beneath to Broken Sword, and that was like, I remember at the time, your game was on every magazine in the world. I don't know. I don't know how to explain this, but it was everywhere. Broken Sword was everyone, was breaking every sort of...
And did you have magazines in Venezuela?
We got magazines. We don't have local made ones. We got them from Spain, because the way it worked was that we basically got magazines like 1 or 2 months old.
Right.
Because they came from Spain, and it was the 90s. The world wasn't as it is right now. So we get these magazines. I remember big ones like this. That was from a company. One was called Super Juegos, a Spanish one.
I remember.
And the other one was Micro something. PC Mania, Micromania. It was the second one. And then it has this big. It was like a newspaper size big. But yeah, we got them late. So I always went every Sunday. Well, like the second Sunday of the month, I took a bus that like 30 minutes to just go to the store to buy the magazines and start reading. So yeah, it brings me so many memories. I play everything. I went at Sherlock Holmes and not the Rosa to the first one, the Sculpted. And this brings many memories. So when I think of the future of point and click, because I love Quantic Dreams game like Detroit Become Human, I just finished, and I think it's an amazing game. But there is something that is missed from those games, in the sense that, at least for me personally, I still enjoy more the point and click adventure games, because it's a game that makes you think more. You have to, use the objects and so on to keep. But I am always thinking, what's the next step? Where do you see the next step? Do you think it's about better graphics? Do you think it's about trying to put different angles? How do you see where do you think they should go from here?
I would say that one of the ambitions that we have going forward is that we write games that are unashamedly adventures, but more than a static world which is waiting for the player, that there's a world that's much more active, and that the puzzles feel like adventure puzzles, and they are adventure puzzles, but they're more interesting than looking into the game designer's mind. Okay. They're all about subverting the world, and that is what we're working on.
Okay, I like where you're going.
But never forgetting that this is an adventure game.
Yes, of course. Perfect. I love so much. I think 3 minutes, okay. So all I can say is thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's really, it's a great privilege. I love to hear your story. There's an interesting film about either Argentina or Uruguay, and I'm reminded it was a very arty film that very few people watch, that came out quite recently, and I'm reminded that this housewife from Buenos Aires used to unwrap things in newspaper and read the newspaper, because the newspaper was more current, that was used for packing, than what they could buy in the store. Wow. Which is amazing. And that's the same sort of thing, isn't it?
It is. It actually. I'm just full with joy, because as I was saying, again, I'm going to repeat this. I know it's meeting the creator of something you love so much.
Well, I'm very flattered. Thank you.
So I really wish you the best with the next project. I will be the first there because anything you do to me is just perfect.
That's very sweet. Thank you so much.
So,
it's a great privilege.
So I really, really hope to know what it is. I also hope it has a 2 at the end for some reason, and I just leave it there.
It's super ambitious, but it is absolutely unapologetically an adventure game. It's exactly what it'll answer the question that you asked just now.
Okay. So, well, guys, everyone, Charles Cecil.
Thank you.